and there's intimacy on the radio, and there's naturalness on the radio that can never be replicated on TV. The marvelous resurgence of radio as a political force in this country.
News-related radio programming is evolving.
There's a huge hole in our dialogue that can be filled by the synthesis of traditional radio and the freedom that comes from a live podcast. You're about to experience Cowboy State Politics live. Here we go. Good morning, my friends, and welcome to another incredible installment from very high above all the puerile and insipid forms of Wyoming mainstream media. This is Cowboy State Politics. I, of course, am your illustrious host, David Iverson, firmly ensconced behind the silver Cowboy State Politics microphone and broadcasting to you from the base of the Bighorns at the Cowboy State Politics Studio in Sheridan, Wyoming. Good morning, my friends, and welcome to the program. Happy Tuesday. It is October 7th, 2 years after Hamas terrorists brutally attacked Israel in the killing, and they ended up killing over 1,200 Israeli citizens. Now, before I even get started, I just want to put that into perspective for you. Israel is a really small country, and if you were to do a comparison between the population of Israel and the population of, say, New York City, October 7th would be the equivalent of over 30,000 Americans being killed. That was the significance of it. Children were slaughtered. There were several hundred hostages taken. It was brutal. Innocent people that had done nothing were just, meaninglessly slaughtered. And for no other reason other than there were a bunch of Hamas terrorists that they just wanted to exact, what they think is revenge on the nation of Israel. But the truth is, it's not Israel that was attacking anybody. It was Hamas. It has always been Hamas. And anybody in the media that tells you, well, Israel's perpetrating a genocide or they're slaughtering women and children. No, first, you don't understand the definition of the word genocide. There is not a systematic effort underfoot to wipe out everybody in Gaza. Secondly, the Hamas committed an act of war. Now, you might say, well, how did they commit an act of war if they're not really a country? Well, in 1985, the Palestinians declared independence at the United Nations in 1985. And so, and again, Gaza depends upon Israel for just about everything, water, food, all sorts of support, which hadn't ended until Hamas attacked Israel. And so when another country attacks another one, what do you expect is going to happen? That they should just lay down and take it? Well, that's what almost everybody in the mainstream media is arguing for. And by the way, there are a number of people in Wyoming that they've been posting a lot of stuff that I would say is downright anti-Semitic. I'm talking to you, Anthony Bouchard. You need to do your research. You need to understand what's happening in the region before you go on social media and start claiming things that just frankly aren't true. So October 7th, 2 years ago, I want to play for you a video of what, and I don't have a news report of that day. It happened so late in the afternoon, I think around 3 o'clock. But I've got a video of a couple days later that discusses what happened in Israel on October 7th. So I want to start out there just by playing that for you. Hold on just a second. Here we go. This is from, I believe this one's from Fox News. Check this out.
Hello, Bill. Today, the Israeli Defense Force did a screening of a lot of the Hamas video. Some of them wore GoPros. There was security video. There are cell phones that have been seized. There's even audio that has been seized. And they did it in a very deliberate attempt to try to show the Hamas savagery and combat the narrative that you've seen with demonstrations and in much of the media that Israel is the aggressor. Now, most of what we saw today, we can't show you simply because it's too horrible. But I can tell you some of what we saw. Dash cam video of Israelis being ambushed in their cars. We saw a girl hiding under a desk. She was discovered and executed. Israelis huddled in a safe room who were massacred in the safe room. There was a father and his two little boys who tried to seek shelter in their bomb shelter. The Hamas attacker threw a grenade into the shelter. The father was killed. The two little boys survived. It looked like one of the little boys lost an eye. They both screamed for their father and they screamed for their mothers. The attackers took selfies with a truckload of wounded hostages as they drove back to the Gaza Strip. The IDF even released a phone call in which one of the attackers called back to his parents and bragged that he had killed 10 people, and they should be proud because their son is a hero. Here's the IDF spokesman.
It wasn't sporadic freedom fighters fighting as a welfare organisation. That's how Hamas portrays themselves to the world. But what you saw here today is brutal, ruthless tactics, even worse.
And the airstrikes into the Gaza Strip are constant. They seem to pick up last night. Israel says the targets are tunnels, operational headquarters, compounds, and observation posts, and they're prepping for the next stage, which is widely interpreted as the ground offensive. Something we haven't seen very much happen today, UAV, unmanned aerial vehicle or drone, came out of the Gaza Strip, and Israel intercepted it.
Wow.
Bill?
What is the status of the boys you mentioned, Mike? At the moment, do we know?
Well, Israel said their status is very sensitive, which I think can be interpreted as good news because if they had passed away in this attack, then that's an easy thing to release. So their status is sensitive, and they can't talk about it at this stage.
Mike, thanks. Mike Tobin, back with you with more headlines throughout the morning here. Thank you, Mike.
So that was a year ago, October 2023, after 1,200 Israelis and a number of Americans were killed. In fact, there were over 40 Americans that were killed that day from Fox News in an article entitled "The Forgotten Americans of Hamas's Terrorist Massacre on October 7th." And I quote, "It has been more than 16 months since more than 1,400 victims were murdered, raped, tortured, and kidnapped by Hamas, a group officially designated as a terrorist entity by the U.S. State Department in 1997. 39 countries, none more so than Israel, felt the agony of their innocent civilians falling victim to Hamas's massacre on October 7th, 2023. On that day, Hamas executed one of the most brutal terror attacks globally since September 11th. America did not escape unscathed. Dozens of American families were forever broken that day when they experienced the heartbreak of a death notification or news that their loved one was kidnapped by terrorists and most likely later had been killed. On that mournful day in September of 2023, 45 Americans were murdered and 12 Americans were kidnapped. As an active duty FBI agent stationed in Israel from 2020 to 2024, I witnessed firsthand how the tragedy of October 7th impacted American families. U.S. law designates the FBI as the lead agency for investigations into Americans killed or injured in a terrorist attack anywhere in the world. And a presidential policy directive designates the FBI as lead agency for investigations dealing with kidnapped Americans anywhere in the world. So let me ask you something. If this were to happen anywhere other than Israel, what would America have done? They would have gone after the country that killed 45 Americans. And that is what a lot of folks that are, apologizing for Hamas and being the Palestinian supporters fail to recognize, or either that or they don't care. Their politics overrides their pride in their fellow Americans. But anywhere in the world, had Mexico done this to the U.S., killed 1,200 people, launched thousands of rockets in one day, what would the U.S. do? Oh, there would probably be Tomahawk cruise missiles flying into Mexico City right about now, or the day after it happened. But because it's Israel, Apparently that's different. Now let's talk about Gaza, for example. Now Gaza is roughly 60 square miles, or to give you some geography, that's roughly the size of Washington, D.C. So really, I guess they call themselves a country, but it's a really, really small country. And of those 3,000 rockets that were fired, or thousands of rockets that were fired that day, if you do the math, it means that at least one rocket was fired from every single acre in Gaza. Now, an acre is actually pretty small. It's 43,560 square feet. It's not even a square mile. It's a pretty small place. Now, if you're a civilian and you're living in Gaza and a rocket is fired from the acre in which your house is pretty well close, you're going to know it. There's no way that you can't. And so, not to say that all the civilians living in Gaza are complicit with what's going on. I'm sure that's not the case. But I want to just give you some facts, for example. So Gaza, 60 square miles. That means at least one rocket from every single acre in Gaza. Now, add on top of that Israel went to great lengths to notify all of the people that live in Gaza of the impending attack. Now, it wasn't just an attack, just boom, the very next morning. They waited because they had to notify civilians. They dropped leaflets. They sent text messages. They sent emails thousands and thousands of times. And yet, now, the Palestinians are claiming that Israel is killing all sorts of civilians. Well, I have news for you, my friends. If you have been notified that an attack is impending, and you're living on the acre where a rocket was fired, which, by the way, there were enough rockets fired from Gaza for every single acre. And so if you are the Palestinian that's living there and you're told to get out because there's an attack coming and you choose to stay there, at the very least, that means you're complicit. Let's just be completely honest about this. So news reports that you hear, or so-called news reports that you hear, that there have been thousands and thousands of women and children killed in Gaza, are at the very least misleading. Now, let's talk about that. So Hamas had a habit of putting their political headquarters underneath hospitals, underneath schools, of stockpiling weapons inside hospitals so that they could use the hospital as a shield against whatever attack was going to happen. You remember the big news report where it came out? It was shortly after October 7th, and Israel destroys hospital. And, there were hundreds of people. The news report said that hundreds of people have been killed. Well, the truth was that was Hamas's version. The real story is that the rocket hit in the parking lot outside of the hospital because that's where the tunnel was. So there were a lot of reports coming out of Gaza, which most of the American media picked up and just ran with. They didn't try to verify them or anything because it fits their political narrative that, the poor Palestinians. Oh, and that's another thing. Palestine has never been a country in the history of the world. I don't care which history textbook you look at, whether it draws you a map or whatever and says that Palestine is a country. It never was. Now, Gaza was given up in an attempted peace deal by Israel. There have been several attempted peace deals. Anybody that says that, we have to have a two-state solution, effectively, they had one. They absolutely had one, and yet they continue to kill Israelis. And the reason why is the Palestinians aren't interested in their own country. They're interested in the death of Israel and by proxy, and if they could pull it off, the death of the United States. The truth is, my friends, that most of what you see in the media is a load of bullcrap. And it's being October 7th, we should sit down and take stock of what, and I would say that Israel is by far our strongest ally. You hear a lot of people say, "Well, it's Great Britain." Well, really, I don't really know that that's the case. The truth is that we need to stick with Israel, and despite what you see on social media by some so-called or not so-called, but some people who have authority, make sure that you dig into this and do your own homework, because the truth is it is very different than the picture the media is portraying to you. Here's another piece from the Times of Israel. Hamas said to demand numerous key terror chiefs, October 7th participants, to be freed in exchange for hostages. Now, this one was published 2 days ago, so it was after Trump's ultimatum saying, release the hostages now. And still, Hamas says, well, maybe if you give up a whole bunch of terrorists that killed a whole bunch of Israelis, well, then maybe we'll consider it. And I quote from the Times of Israel. Citing Hamas sources, Channel 12 News sets out what it says are a series of Hamas demands that the terror group is going to make in the talks in Egypt, aiming at finalizing the release of all Israeli hostages in the first phase of U.S. President Donald Trump's plan to end the war in Gaza. Among these is a Hamas demand for the release of several of the most notorious Palestinian terrorists in exchange for hostages. These include Marwan Barghouti and the Fatah Denzim chief, jailed for multiple murders in the Second Intifada, Ahmed Sadat, Secretary General of the Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine, Ibrahim Hamed, serving 45 life terms for orchestrating the killings of numerous Israelis on Hamas's West Bank, commander during the Second Intifada, Abbas al-Sayed, who orchestrated the 2002 bombing at the Park Hotel in Netanya, in which 39 Israelis were killed, and Hamas's Hassan Salamah, who is serving 48 life terms for multiple suicide bombings. Now, Channel 12 cites a Hamas source saying it, quote, won't give up on securing the release of these other life-term terrorists whose release Israel has vetoed in previous deals, even at the cost of dooming the deal. There are currently 303 security prisoners serving life sentences in Israel. Channel 12 further reported that the Hamas delegation under Khalil al-Hayy will also be negotiating simultaneously with the Palestinian Authority team, as it seeks to ensure that the initial mechanism for day after Gaza includes the Palestinian Authority. The TV report said that Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas is promising reforms. How many times in the past has Mahmoud Abbas promised reforms? How many times has he sat at a peace table with Israel and promised that they would stop the fighting and stop the killing? How many times? Maybe for tomorrow's program, I'll do a little investigation and find out how many times Mahmoud Abbas has made promises. There's no reason that Israel should believe anything that comes out of his mouth, and neither should you, my friends. Let's see here. So Channel 12 also reported that Hamas sources are saying that a group is also demanding a larger initial IDF withdrawal than is shown on the map that Trump issued yesterday. To what it says are the lines where IDF was deployed in January. Okay, so essentially what they're saying is, we'll give up, but you're going to give us all the territory that we had at the very beginning. It's idiocy, my friends, absolute idiocy. Well, again, today being October 7th, take some time and just do some research, get on your smartphone or whatever, and just find out exactly what happened. Read both sides of it. Read the things that say that Israel is a bunch of terrorists, and read the other side that says that actually it is the Palestinians. Because history is not on their side, my friends. The Palestinians have a long history of trying to make peace deals and then going back on them, taking land. And in the Gaza Strip, by the way, that was one of them. It's just, the absolute hatred of Israelis from the United Nations and from the world's media is absolutely astounding. And, it just blows my mind. And, frankly, my friends, like I said, today is October 7th. Do some research, find out what's true, read both sides, and then use that thing in between your ears. From the cow pie. This story came out yesterday. FBI document shows that Biden's FBI spied on Senator Lummis and 11 others in the January 6th probe. And I quote, the bombshell revelation was announced Monday afternoon by Senate Judiciary Chairman Chuck Grassley of Iowa, who released the document. It refers to the type of phone data collection known as toll analysis. Grassley and Lummis said personal cell phones of lawmakers were targeted. Lummis was informed of the document by FBI personnel at a Monday meeting just ahead of Grassley's release of the document. Joe Jackson told the Cowboy State Daily. Quote, I am absolutely appalled that the Biden administration used the FBI to spy on the private communications of Republican U.S. senators, myself included, Lummis said in a statement. This was a blatant assault on our constitutional rights as elected officials and a calculated attempt to sabotage the separation of powers. Make no mistake, the authoritarian, unconstitutional surveillance and attack on the executive branch under the Biden administration demands an immediate investigation and prosecution. Those responsible must be held accountable, and we must assure that this abuse of power can never happen again. Unredacted parts of the memo refer to Arctic Frost, the name of Smith's probe of the riot, and the members of Congress who were targeted. The lawmakers are Lummis and 7 others, and 1 Republican in the House, Mike Kelly of Pennsylvania. The senators, besides Lummis, are Marsha Blackburn, Bill Hagerty, both of Tennessee, Lindsey Graham of South Carolina, Josh Hawley of Missouri, Ron Johnson of Wisconsin, Dan Sullivan of Alaska, and Tommy Tuberville of Alabama. The memo is dated September 27th of 2023. It says that an FBI special agent whose name is redacted conducted preliminary toll analysis of limited toll records associated with those lawmakers. The names of FBI personnel who were drafted and approved the memo are redacted. Quote, John Barrasso said, "This is an outrageous abuse of power. Republicans will work with the Trump administration to investigate who's responsible and hold them accountable. We must ensure that this never happens again." As if you needed any more evidence of the lawless nature of the Joe Biden administration, that they would stop at no ends to achieve their political goals, which included breaking numerous laws. And, and this might be further evidence that Joe Biden really didn't have any control over what was happening in his White House, nor did he have control over the FBI. From the very beginning, it was obvious that Biden was suffering from, dementia or whatever phraseology you want to use, losing his marbles. But he didn't have control of it. And, actors in his administration his administration was packed full of, radicals. And that's about the only way that you can describe them is political radicals. So now it has come out that they intentionally spied on members of Congress. And, I saw a lot of media reports yesterday that, it was Jack Smith. And and this is what Democrats always do. When something comes out like this, the very first thing that they try to do is assign blame to somebody who's already in trouble, who we already know is going down. Maybe the next thing that will come out, it was Jim Comey. And it probably was, he was probably in there somewhere. But the Democrats will try to assign blame to just deflect it away from themselves, even though it's the Biden administration that all of the Democrats were defending the entire time. There were no ends to the laws that the Biden administration would break in furtherance of their political agenda. And this is just one more example. Back to the piece here. So the Cowboy says that the data shows when and to whom a call is made. So it's the metadata that they were looking at, as well as the duration and general location data of the call. The data does not include the content of the call, the Judiciary Committee said in a statement. Quote, this document was found in a prohibited access file in response to Grassley's oversight requests. Grassley's oversight exposed the existence of prohibited access files, a file system the FBI uses to limit access to certain documents by making some files inaccessible to most FBI agents. Based on the evidence to date, Arctic Frost related weaponization by federal law enforcement under Biden was arguably worse than Watergate, Grassley said in a statement. And that's often brought up, but let's just take a little bit of perspective here. Watergate was the break-in of the DNC headquarters. So a couple of people in Richard Nixon's administration broke in, burglarized the Watergate building, and then Richard Nixon attempted to cover it up. And that's where the whole however many minutes it was missing from Nixon's tapes, because he taped just about everything that happened in the Oval Office. But that's all that it was. It was a break-in with a cover-up, which led to Nixon's eventual resignation. This is way bigger than Watergate, my friends. This is way bigger than a simple B&E. You're talking about the systematic targeting of Republicans in a broad swath. Members of Congress, former members of the administration, the prosecution of a former president, the raiding of his house, the jailing of people that were in his house. I've got another piece here in the stack of stuff about suggestions that we ought to perp walk Jim Comey, which I'm not opposed to, by the way. But I think that we should do things by the book. Think about, oh man, what was his name? Roger Stone had his house raided by frogmen, with CNN present, by the way. The FBI tipped off CNN that they were going to do a raid on Roger Stone's house. And what about Steve Bannon? He spent time in prison. Now, the charge there was refusing to obey a subpoena. And then there were several others that were targeted. And so this is a little bit bigger than Watergate, cow pie. And, you know, I mean, if the cow pie had any understanding of history, and who actually wrote this piece of garbage anyway? I mean, it's good that they're reporting on it. Sean Barry. Yeah, so I don't know him. I'm sure we'll come to know him pretty soon. He works for the cow pie, and he's reporting on political matters. All right, my friends, it seems that we're back. We had a power surge here at the studio. I'm not exactly sure what happened, and I don't know when you cut out. That was totally weird, but it took a while to reset everything. But we're back. So let's try that break again, and then we'll come back and continue on with the program. Are you tired of all the meaningless political drivel floating around right now? Endless commentary that really doesn't have anything backing it up? Do you long for the days of true investigative journalism coming from an authoritative source who really doesn't care how popular and apparently good-looking a politician is? Fortunately for you, that's what I do on Cowboy State Politics. New episodes are published every Monday, Wednesday, and Saturday, and you can get them anywhere that you get your podcasts. iHeartRadio, iTunes, TuneIn, really any of them will work. But the easiest way is just to go to the website, cowboystatepolitics.com. There, you can find all of the shows, as well as any of the articles I might bring up during the course of the program. Cowboy State Politics Live, the program you're listening to right now, is broadcast every Tuesday through Friday, beginning at 8 a.m. Pay attention to all of that other block-headed nonsense if you want. Just make sure that you don't miss an episode of Cowboy State Politics. And now, back to our program. Welcome back to the program, Cowboy State Politics Live on a Tuesday, complete with power surges. Apparently there was way too much power coming from the Cowboy State Politics studio, and it overloaded the entire neighborhood. I don't know if that's true. It probably is. I'm sure of it. Well, welcome back to the program, my friends. Before the break, we were talking about some Wyoming news. And apparently, Senator Lummis was spied on by the Biden administration, and he really shouldn't surprise anybody. They went to there weren't any lengths that they would go to move their political agenda forward. Now here's another one, and I've been thinking about this topic a lot lately. Oh, by the way, I've got a great announcement. I can't believe I forgot about this at the beginning of the program. But Cowboy State Politics Live is now syndicated on Roku, Apple TV, and it's on the OBBM network. I'm super excited about this. It's an internet streaming network, and you can get it on Roku or your Amazon Fire Stick or on Apple TV. I had to brag to the lovely Christine. I think it was last night. I downloaded the OBBM network on our TV out in the living room. Oh, by the way, yeah, we're still at the home studio. Agent 29 hasn't come back yet. But anyway, syndicated on the OBBM network. And so if you just go to Roku or Apple TV, you can search for it. And the episodes are a little bit delayed because right now it's all on demand. But what I'm going to try to do is upload at least 3 episodes a week to their service, and you'll be able to watch it right from Apple TV or Roku or Amazon. It's pretty cool. I'm super excited about it. Finally, somebody else paying attention to Cowboy State Politics Live, and I'll show you a little bit more about that a little bit later on. Maybe we'll see what happens later on in the program. But here's another piece from the Turkey Vulture. And if you ever had any questions about where the Wyoming media is at, this should clear it all up for you. We live in a red state and we have a blue media, my friends. It's so blue. I mean, it's almost like navy blue. It's all run by Democrats, and the best example of that is the Cowboy. It's run by a whole bunch of George W. Bush, alumnus. Jimmy Orr is one of those. They hire people who are radical left wing. Pretty much every article they put out that even mentions conservatives or the Freedom Caucus is in a negative light. Now, the Wyoming Turkey Vulture, which, I mean, I guess the Wyoming's paper of record used to be the Casper Star Tribune, but it's not anymore. I mean, the Casper Star, aside from sports, they really don't report on anything that happens in Wyoming. So I think that torch probably passes to the Wyoming Turkey Vulture, the Wyoming Tribune Eagle. Listen to this. This is an opinion piece by Roger McDaniel. Now, McDaniel used to be a state representative. He now claims to be a pastor. But listen to the opening paragraphs of this thing. It's called Pastor Thought Hitler Would Make Germany Great Again. Quote, I've been criticized for writing too many Trump columns, setting aside large numbers of Americans who believe he's an existential threat to the republic. What he says and does in your face 24/7. Every executive order, social media post, rant, or lie becomes the center of attention. Nonetheless, no more obsessing with him. Today, I'm thinking of German pastor Martin Niemöller and his post-war sermon, First They Came. And this is the famous quotation that you hear all of the time. And I would argue that Mr. McDaniel is taking this entirely out of context. But here's the famous quotation, and then we'll talk about how McDaniel is bastardizing it. And it says, quote, first they came for the socialists. I didn't speak out because I was not a socialist. Then they came for the trade unionists. And I did not speak out because I'm not a trade unionist. Then they came for the Jews, and I didn't speak out because I was not a Jew. Then they came for me, and there was no one left to speak for me. And he says, forced evictions in Mogadishu spark anger at the government. I don't know why it says that in the middle of his piece, but the original was longer, more deeply confessional. What follows, according to Niemöller, biographer Harold Marcuse, is a translation of his original 1947 sermon, edited because of limited space. Quote, the people put in the camps were communists. Who cared about them? Who raised their voice? We thought. Communists? Opponents of religion, enemies of Christians. Should I be my brother's keeper? Okay, so he goes on and on. But his whole point in the piece, and he doesn't really, in the body of the piece, he doesn't explicitly mention Trump. But what he is attempting to do is to call Trump Hitler. I mean, that's how he begins it, saying that he's, an existential threat to the country. But Roger McDaniel is not a pastor. He's actually got a blog that where he publishes his sermons, or at least some of them. In one of them, he tells his congregation to repent for their white privilege. If I get a chance, I'll go find it, and I'll post it at cowboystatepolitics.com. But this is the trash that the Wyoming media prints in their paper. And if you read this thing, I mean, it is absolutely incredible. We just went through, and if you thought that the left was going to tone down your rhetoric, you are absolutely mistaken, my friends. I'll take you back to the interview I did with Carly Provenza and Mike Yen. And at the end of it, and in my opinion, the very last question is probably the most important one. At the end of that interview, I say, okay, let's hit the nail on the head. How do we turn the volume knob down? And I actually said, you know what? I'll take responsibility for whatever part, I play in that. But I don't think that I've, that I played a big part at all. I've never called for violence. I've never done anything like that. At the most, I'm fair, opinionated, but fair. And so I looked right at those two Democrats and I said, how do we turn down the volume? And not either of them would denounce what their party has done. Neither of them would talk about what the Sheridan County Democrat Party has done, flashing swastikas around and having signs that are calling our president a dictator and Hitler. I've got pictures, numerous pictures of protests held right down here in downtown Sheridan, Wyoming, that called the president Hitler and a dictator. But if you ask those two Democrats, hey, how do we turn down the volume? Neither of them would take responsibility for anything that their party has done. And similarly, members of the media, and I guess opinion columnist Roger McDaniel, he's not going to take responsibility for anything because he believes that he's absolutely in the right, and he bears no responsibility whatsoever to the culture of violence that we're now living in. where people openly, and we just had Charlie Kirk assassinated in public, broad daylight, in front of thousands of people. And you would think that Democrats would do a little soul searching and say, hey, maybe the stuff we're doing isn't all that productive. Maybe we're focusing on trying to get people killed, which is the intentional result. And I've got a couple of other pieces here in the stack of stuff about the guy that tried to kill Brett Kavanaugh. By the way, he now calls himself Sophie. There's a fascinating piece from NBC, the never-ending broadcast of communism. But the Democrats, they won't turn down the volume. They won't accept responsibility for what their party's done. There's no instance of self-reflection whatsoever. And, and all you need to do is look at what's happening in Portland and what's happening in Chicago. There are people that are openly, listen to this one. Here's Brandon Johnson. And I was going to play this later on in the broadcast, but I'm kind of on a roll. This is what the mayor of Chicago has said. Listen to this.
I said very candidly that.
Okay, well, first of all, I have no idea who that guy down in the corner is. I was just looking for the soundbite really fast, and this is the first video I found. So ignore the guy in the far right-hand corner of the screen, but listen to Brandon Johnson.
The right wing in this country wants a rematch of the Civil War. I want that to sit in right now, because the President of the United States of America has declared war on the people of Chicago and people across America.
That's right.
He's more interested.
All right. Oh boy, there is so much stuff there. So first, it was Republicans that were in favor of doing away with slavery. It was Republicans who didn't own a single slave, members of Congress, that is, prior to the Civil War. It was the Democrats who almost all of them owned slaves in Congress prior to the Civil War. It was Republicans that forced through the 1965 Civil Rights Act. It was a Republican president who signed the Emancipation Proclamation. It has been Republicans who pushed through Title IX. It was not Republicans who sided with the Ku Klux Klan. It was not Republicans who had the Ku Klux Klan march during their convention in the 1920s. All of that was Democrats. And so for Brandon Johnson to say the right wing wants a rematch of the Civil War, first, the guy is absolutely ignorant of history. But second, the president has not declared war on Chicago. The president has said, we're going to stop the violence that you, Brandon Johnson, the mayor of Chicago, are evidently incapable of stopping. I mean, it's the lies, the level of ignorance that is floating around this country is absolutely incredible, my friends. And it is folks like Brandon Johnson who are trying to foment violence. He's openly telling people to fight against ICE officers, which, by the way, the federal ICE officers, it is absolutely their duty to arrest illegal immigrants. It doesn't matter what the mayor of Chicago says. You can't set up no ICE zones in your city. And it's just absolutely ridiculous, the lengths that Democrats are going to fight this administration. It's just absolutely bizarre. Okay, so now, and talking about this culture of violence here. So there's a piece in Just the News, and it's entitled "Democrat Congressional Candidate Defends Dark Humor Video About the Charlie Kirk Assassination." And here we go again. And I quote, "A Michigan Democrat candidate for the U.S. House is doubling down after posting a video in the wake of the Charlie Kirk assassination stating, quote, 'Hey, MAGA, how does it hurt that Jimmy Kimmel is back, but you guys can't get your guy back?'" Oh, my God, my friends. And that's a Democrat running for the United States Congress. Shelby Campbell, who's running for Michigan's 13th district, posted the video on Facebook. Now, since then, it went viral, with many calling for Campbell to drop out of the race. Instead, Campbell has doubled down in the last few days, acknowledging that it was her in the video. She posted on X, "Yes, it's me. It's called dark humor. No, I don't think there was anything dark, humorous about that. In the viral video, Campbell referred to Jimmy Kimmel Live returning to the air after being suspended for a time for comments Kimmel made on his show following Kirk's death. Campbell has labeled herself the grassroots candidate in the race, running against Democrat incumbent Shree. You gotta go look up a picture of that guy named Shree. He is an absolute disaster. Quote, here's what she says. Now I'm running for Congress in Michigan's 13th to put working families, not corporate donors, at the center of our democracy, Campbell said. My campaign is about community over corporations, compassion over cruelty, and people over profit. This was not the only video that Campbell posted following Kirk's assassination on September 10th. In an earlier TikTok video, posted the day after Kirk's death, she says, quote, I don't think anyone deserves to be murdered in front of their wife and children, but life happens, and when you support radical ideas and you say them out loud, and they're evil, bad things might happen to you. Yet another example of someone who hasn't watched a single video of Charlie Kirk. There is nowhere, and I've watched probably hundreds of Charlie Kirk videos. I've seen him in person 3 times. I actually met him on one occasion. There's not a single thing that I ever heard him say that could be in any way interpreted to be racist. Now, was he critical of people that happen to be black? Yeah. He said that Ketanji Brown Jackson, I don't remember his exact phraseology, but basically he said she's dumber than a box of rocks. And he also referred to Ilhan Omar in the same. Now, just because you happen to be black and somebody calls you stupid does not mean that whomever said it says everybody's stupid. It just says you are, which is exactly what Charlie Kirk was referring to. But it's another instance of the Democrats wanting to create violence. Here's another one. Virginia Beach Democrats back Virginia Attorney General nominee Jay Jones despite violent texts about Republicans. This one is absolutely shocking. And I quote from the New York Post, Democrats are shamelessly standing by the party's scandal-scarred Attorney General nominee for Virginia, Jay Jones, after vile texts surfaced of him fantasizing about then Republican State House Speaker Todd Gilbert being assassinated. And let me just show you. Let's see here if I can get there. Okay. Let me just show you that piece or the text here. Hold on just a second. There we go. And there we go. Okay. So here you go. Okay. So it says, if those guys die before me, I will go to their funerals to piss on their graves. And then it goes on. Three people, 2 bullets. I can't believe this guy has not resigned yet. But because he hasn't, it tells you where the left in this country actually is. He sees no problem with that. Calling for the assassination of people. Virginia Beach Democrats insist that Jones will serve, quote, with integrity and accountability, and gubernatorial nominee Abigail Spanberger has refused to disavow him, despite sickening text messages where Jones fantasized about Gilbert getting 2 bullets to the head and calling his young children little fascists. Recent press may have spotlighted past mistakes, Virginia Beach Democrats declared in a statement. We say, let those without sin cast the first stone. They always do that. It's always that with them. Oh, enough about me. Let's talk about you. Jay Jones, quote, they go on. Jay Jones has taken responsibility, apologized, and shown he is committed to serving with integrity. So calling for the death of somebody that you politically disagree with, is that what integrity is now, my friends? Is that what that boils down to? On Friday, National Review published a bombshell story about a multitude of disturbing messages Jones sent back in 2022. That's where those texts come from. Let's see here. The texts, first reported by National Review, were sent by Jones around 8 a.m. on August 8th, 2022, to Republican House Delegate Kerry Coyner, who was clearly troubled by the messages. Republican House Delegate Coyner, who was on the receiving end of those, said, Jay, please stop. Jones was previously a member of the Virginia House of Delegates, having served from 2018 through January 22. And she told him, quote, it really bothers me when you talk about hurting people or wishing death on them. Jones had begun the text exchange, whining about the glowing tributes from Republicans that centrist Joe Johnson Jr. a former state legislator who died days earlier. Quote, if those guys die before me, I'll go to my funeral. Okay, I read you that one. So, I mean, yet another example of how the Democrats refuse to acknowledge the culture of violence that they're fomenting. And the reason why is because they want it. They're totally in favor of all the violence that's happening in Portland right now. They're totally in favor of ICE agents being ambushed. Over the weekend, perhaps you heard the news story of ICE agents in I don't know if it was Portland or Chicago, one of them, being barricaded by vehicles. And then when they called for backup, the police would not assist them. My friends, there's no easier way to put this, just to say that we are living in a culture of death. When we celebrate assassins, the guy that killed the healthcare CEO, there were Democrats cheering him. He had a fan following him. I could not believe the news reports after it, people glorifying what this guy did. And the assassination of Charlie Kirk, it's very much the same thing. Even here in Wyoming, there are teachers posting text messages, calling all of us fascists. I gave you the story on the podcast of the Sheridan teacher who, on a post by the Sheridan Press talking about a vigil that was going to be held for Charlie Kirk, he posted, great, a whole bunch of fascists getting together. It's not the exact phraseology of it. That's a teacher in Sheridan. There's another one, one in Goshen County. The wife of the superintendent of schools, I believe in Platte County, doing very much the same thing. My friends, we are living in a culture of death, and it is it's absolutely incredible. Absolutely incredible. Well, my friends, we're going to go ahead and take a quick break. I've got a great coming up after the break. I've got an interview with my friend Ovi Muntean. Now, you may not have heard of him, but Ovi and his family escaped communist Romania in the 1980s. And I've known him for a long time. In fact, one of the very first GOP events I went to in Cody, he was the keynote speaker, and he's been on the program several times. And he's going to be in Sheridan October 11th. That's this upcoming Saturday. And he's one of the keynote speakers. He's got an amazing story. And if you really want to know what socialism looks like, then stay tuned and watch the interview. It's a brief glimpse into him, and then I'll tell you how you can find out more information about him. But we'll do that after the break. More.
Ever since gold backing was removed from the dollar, the value has dropped significantly over the past few decades. Experts say this is one of the main reasons goods are more expensive and your savings are worth less each year. How would you know how many dollars to save for retirement if the valuation of the dollar changes over time? Would you work all week for that $20 gold piece? Let's look at the valuation of this coin from the 1970s to today. When President Nixon took us off the gold standard in 1971, this coin traded for about $275. Today, it trades for about $14,000. Buying and holding rare coins using only a fraction of your portfolio is our suggested way to save for the future. Call U.S. Coin Capital at 1-800-878-2646 to get your free United States Gold and Silver Buyer's Guide.
Make sure that you subscribe and follow the Cowboy State Politics podcast. You can do that from the website, cowboystatepolitics.com, or anywhere that you get your podcasts. That way, you'll make sure that you won't miss a single episode of Cowboy State Politics. Welcome to Lessons in Civility by Morton Buildings. Gentlemen, is your garage completely jam-packed full of all of your unnecessary crap? And your lovely wife has been on your tail, nagging you non-stop to clean it out? It's not because she just wants to incessantly irritate you. Chivalry dictates that you should clear out a space so she can park her car inside and you don't end up sleeping on the couch anymore. To do that, contact Nick and Jesse at Morton Buildings. Their phone number is 307-674-2532. Not only are they the experts in metal building construction, they're also skilled at keeping you out of the doghouse. One more time. Their phone number is 307-674-2532, or you can check them out at their website, mortonbuildings.com. This has been Lessons in Civility from Morton Buildings. Welcome back to the program, Cowboy State Politics Live. I'm your host, David Iverson, documented to be almost always right 99% of the time. Welcome back to the program, my friends. Cowboy State Politics Live on a Thursday, or a Tuesday, not Thursday. I'm just, after that power outage, man, I'm just all messed up this morning. Anyway, so over the weekend, I recorded an interview with my friend Ovi Muntean. And as I was telling you before the break, you may not recognize the name, but you really need to. He's got an amazing story. And when he was 14 or 15, he and his family escaped communist Romania. And let me just give you kind of a quick history. Among all of the communist countries, Romania was by far the worst. And even worse than the Soviet Union, worse than Yugoslavia, worse than any of the post-World War II Soviet bloc countries. Just incredible brutality by the Ceausescu regime. And let me just give you one quick story. It is common knowledge that Ceausescu and his wife really believed that they'd found the fountain of youth, and they literally would drink the blood of young people. I'm not even kidding you. Go back and look it up. And if you were a Christian, you daily faced hard labor, imprisonment, or death. The communists notoriously would not allow you to leave the country. Other countries, and in the interview, I think Ovi makes the point that other countries build borders to keep people out, to keep illegal immigrants out. Not the communists. They built walls to keep people in, because they couldn't allow anyone to get outside of the country and to tell the rest of the world what was happening inside the country. He's going to be in Sheridan this upcoming Saturday at the Sheridan County GOP Reagan Day dinner. I'm pretty sure there's still tickets available. You can go to their website, Sheridan County GOP, to find them. Well, so to get out of the country, Ovi's dad initiated a hunger strike. And what he did, and I think that he talks about this in the interview, but he sent letters to Radio Free America and Radio Free Europe and announced that he was going to go on a hunger strike. And that's how he forced the Romanian government to cough up the passports. Well, his life story is written down in Ovi's father's book. It's this one. It's called Willing to Die. And it's the story of John Muntean, Ovi Muntean's dad's hunger strike, and getting them out of Romania. Now, one of the interesting parts at the back of the book is he lists the goals from the Naked Communist, and just tell me if any of these sound familiar. Let's see here. U.S. willingness to capitulate in preference to engaging in atomic war, developing an illusion that total disarmament by the United States would be a demonstration of moral strength. Let's see here. Grant recognition to Red China. Admission of Red China to the UN. Allow Soviet satellite individual representation in the UN. That's happened. Let's see here. Capture one or both of the political parties in the United States. Use technical decisions of the courts to weaken basic American institutions by claiming their activities violate civil rights. Get control of the schools. Use them as transmission belts for socialism and current communist propaganda. Soften the curriculum. Get control of teachers' associations. Oh, not like that hasn't happened. Put the party line in textbooks. Gain control of all student newspapers. Infiltrate the press. Oh, that's definitely happened, even here in Wyoming. Get control of book review assignments, editorial writing, and policy-making decisions. Gain control of key positions in radio, TV, and motion pictures. Control art critics and directors of art museums. Present homosexuality, degeneracy, and promiscuity as natural, normal, and healthy. And the list goes on, my friends. If you go through this list, we've pretty much done everything that the naked communist actually set out to do. Now, I've got a couple of these books, and I'm going to give one away every day I've actually got 3 of them, I think. I'll have to look. But my intent is to give one book away every day for the until Ovi comes to Sheridan. And you can see it's signed by the author or by Ovi. And so if you just shoot me a message, the very first person that sends me a message on social media wanting a copy of this book, I will send it to you. So we'll give one of these away every single day until Saturday. So without further ado, here is my interview with my friend Ovi Muntean, or the most recent interview with my friend Ovi. Here you go. It runs about 15 minutes-ish, but here it is. Joining me on the program is my friend Ovi Muntean. He's going to be in Sheridan on October 11th for the Sheridan County Republican Party Reagan Day dinner. Now, he's got an amazing story. He and his family escaped communist Romania back in the 1980s, and since then, he's been living in America. He's got an amazing story. He's been on the program several different times. So, Ovi, welcome back to the show.
Well, thank you so much. It's so good to be back. It's an honor and a privilege to come back to the great state of Wyoming. Amazing, awesome people. Thank you for having me back.
Well, you're welcome anytime. You know that. So it's been a long time since you've been on the show. Why don't you just take a few minutes and introduce yourself to my audience?
Well, my name is Ovi Muntean, and I am actually an immigrant. I came to America in 1981. I was 15 years old at the time. And I came here because my father and my mother decided to give our family a better life. They wanted us to be free to worship the God of the Bible without punishment. They wanted us to experience the free United States of America.
Excellent. Now, I know I ask you to do this every time you're on the show, but could you just explain to me what you guys left, what you escaped from? What was communism and socialism like in Romania?
Well, it's amazing how it's portrayed even in our day here in the United States of America. It's everything is free, education is free, healthcare is free. When in reality, nothing is free. That's a lie. But, the promise of free stuff is very attractive, especially to younger generations. And while you had free healthcare or free education, you had to bribe your way through. As a parent, you had to bribe the teachers to pass your child from one grade to another, or they would fail them. If you had to go see a doctor, you had to bribe the receptionist, then you had to bribe the nurse, then you had to bribe the doctor, then you had to bribe the pharmacist to get your medicine. So you see, the free stuff that was promised came with a high price. And that's what we escaped. Not to talk about the corruption of the government, the corruption of the police departments, everything worked on bribery, and it was torturous. Also, we didn't have no freedom of religion. Just because we were Christians, for example, in school, I was punished above other children simply because we're Christian. To believe in Jesus Christ and profess your faith came at a high price. I'd be asked to go in front of the class. The teacher would slap me and then call me names like the repented one, which was a mocking nickname. And the class would laugh. And then the students, the children, learned to mock me the same way the teachers were mocking me, calling me the repented one. Simply because of the faith. See, something like that here in the United States, we can't even comprehend because something like that happens. It's against the law to discriminate based on religion. Over there, it happened every day, multiple times a day. So stuff like that, that's what we escaped.
Okay. Now I know, like I said, you've been on the program a lot of times, so you've told me a lot about what life was like in Romania. But let's stay on religion or Christianity for just a little bit. Okay. One of the things the communists can't put up with is people who believe in God. And so most of the communist countries, in fact, probably all of them, went to great lengths to make sure that the churches were suppressed. Could you just explain, you told me one story of how you'd have to barricade the door if your family was reading the Bible. Could you just kind of go into that a little bit for me, just so my audience has an understanding of what that was like?
Yes, well, in socialism and in communism, the government controls every aspect of your life. Who you talk to, if you get together, how long you get together with your family and friends, what you talk about. They infiltrate with spies or informers. And for example, when you go to church, even if you're allowed to go to church, which we were, they would control what was preached. They would try to control what was preached. And if any preacher or pastor would go outside of that, Monday morning they'd be interrogated, depending how serious he was, arrested and sent to prison. If you got together in your home, the same thing happened. And many times it wasn't that anybody wanted to inform, but the police had so much power that they could arrest somebody and tell you, if you don't become an informant, you're going to prison for 5 years, hard labor prison term. So even in one's family, somebody could have been arrested and threatened, and now they had no choice but to be an informant. So to come together and have a Bible study without a permission from the government, it was punishable. And so whenever anybody would come in, my mother would put a radio by the telephone in our home, turn to a station with the socialist communist propaganda, turn it on. I would go in the back of the house in the storage room and listen to Voice of America, for example, to somebody preaching from Germany or Austria. And so you grew up like that, and you realize nobody has to tell you that the government controls it, because you're watching, you're experiencing that fear. Somebody knock at the door, boom, all of a sudden you have to turn off the radio from the Voice of America or the Free Europe Talk radio station, and you're quiet, and my dad or my mom would go open the door and see who's at the door. But that fear, you grow up with that. You learn that fear, to fear the government.
So now how you guys got out of Romania is an incredible story. And, your dad wrote a book about it. And why don't you just tell us, how you guys actually got out? Because I think that this one is amazing.
Yeah, so my father decided to give our family a better life, because he said that we had no chance in Romania to become anything simply because we're Christians. You see, like, for example, you weren't allowed to go in higher education because, you were mentally sick because you were clinging to the Bible and to Jesus Christ. And so my father decided to ask permission for us to leave the country, but they don't allow. See, United States of America, we have borders to keep people out. These socialist communist countries, they have borders to keep people in by force. And so after about a year and a half of patiently waiting, the mayor of our town told my father that he won't be allowed to leave he was secretly a Christian and believer in freedom. And so he told my father that you'd have to do something out of the norm. And so my father and my mother prayed. And after they prayed, they make a decision that my father was going to go on a hunger strike until the government would let us leave. But, many other people, thousands, if not tens of thousands of people that went on hunger strike, they were killed. But my father knew that unless he informs the free world at large of his intent to go on a hunger strike, he won't succeed. So he had some friends from Germany, a lady from Romania, a Hungarian lady married a gentleman from Germany, and that's how she got out of Romania, but they would come to visit. So my father, in the middle of the night, removed the dashboard of the German car, put the letters informing his intent behind the dashboard, put the dashboard back, and before sunrise, those friends were across the border out of Romania. Now, just to give you an idea, if they got caught, not only did they be punished, but also my father. So for something like that, they'd easily punish you with 5 years in prison, hard labor. So they went to Germany, removed the dashboard, and mailed the letters to Voice of America radio station and to Free Europe Talk radio station, informing them that he's going to start a hunger strike. That was 1981, and he coincided the hunger strike with the World Conference in Madrid, the Human Rights Conference. Romania was attending because they wanted to be renewing their favorite nation status and to receive the foreign aid that United States gives to those nations. But in order to receive the foreign aid, Romania had to prove that its citizens had the basic civil rights. So the day he had started a hunger strike, they started announcing on the radio on the hour that my father is on a hunger strike, trying to get out of Romania. All that was an embarrassment to Romania. And on the 25th day of the conference, the ambassador of the United States asked the ambassador of Romania, how are the human rights in Romania? And he's like, oh, everybody has the right to do whatever they want. They have the right to go to church. They have the right to go visit other countries. And he said, well, yeah, so how come Mr. Martinez on his 25th day of hunger strike? He was like, oh, I don't know about that. I'll find out and let you know. That day they came over to our house. Well, they would come over into our home every day, 3-4 times a day, and threaten my father. And I was 15 years old, and I remember everything vividly. They were screaming at my dad. He was in bed. And they were threatening to take him to the woods and kill him and chop him up and feed him to the wolves. And his children would grow up without a father, and his wife would be taken, meaning raped by police and other men. And they didn't care that the children were in the house, but my father told them he's willing to die trying. So he refused to stop the hunger strike. He told them they're liars, and until he has the passports in his hand, he's not going to stop. He was really weak by then. And so it took 2 more days for them to bring us the passports, and then they had him call on like a walkie-talkie radio kind of thing, and to inform the Voice of America and Free Europe Talk radio station that he got the passports and that he's stopping the hunger strike. So, in a socialist communist country, you don't own anything. The government owns everything, your house, your car, your whatever you have. So 3 months later, with the clothes on our back, one change of clothes, that's all we're allowed to have. We left Romania along with 52 members of our extended family and came to the great United States of America.
What's the first thing you remember when you got here?
Well, the first thing, we landed in New York. Well, first we went to Italy to do the blood test and all that, and then a week later, we flew into United States of America, and we landed in New York first, and from there we came to Los Angeles. But as soon as I landed in New York and got off the plane and everything, even I say it often that freedom has a scent. I mean, everything was so clean. People were happy, smiling, talking. The streets were just so clean. It was just shocking and surprising. So I say that the smell in the air, that's what made me. Actually, my dad said that I said to him, "Dad, this smells like freedom." Yeah.
All right. So now, that was back in like 1980s. So now you're a successful businessman. You became a citizen the right way. So what are you doing now?
Well, I'm proud to say that I have 3 children. My wife been married 34 years and celebrated this July. Our children, 2 of them served. Our son served in the Marines and our daughter in the Air Force. And we have grandchildren, 5 of them. And
Wow.
We have achieved the American dream. I feel personally blessed beyond belief. I say that a lot because I have been given the opportunity of a lifetime to live in the greatest nation in the world, the United States of America.
Excellent. Now you've got a foundation, right? It's called Northwest Battle Buddies. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Why don't you tell me about that?
Northwest Battle Buddies is a nonprofit organization that provides professionally trained service dogs to veterans with PTSD at no cost to them whatsoever. And so far, we have paired 292 veterans with service dogs and added value to the lives of the men and women that have served our country. And I'm proud to have done that for the last 14 years.
Excellent. Well, if you want to meet my friend Ovi, you can meet him October 11th at the Ramada Inn in Sheridan, and he's going to be our keynote speaker, or one of our keynote speakers for the Reagan Day dinner. And I look forward to seeing you again, my friend.
I look forward to being there too. We're gonna have a good time. Thank you.
So there you have it, my interview with my friend Ovi Muntean. And again, if you want to meet Ovi, you can meet him October 11th in Sheridan at the Ramada Inn for the Sheridan County GOP Reagan Day dinner. It's going to be a good time. And also, as I mentioned before the interview, if you'd like to win a copy of Ovi's father's book, Willing to Die, the first person to send me a message today and every day this week, I'm pretty sure I've got enough books for every day this week. I'm going to give one of them away every single day, and it is autographed by Ovi. And so if you'd like to win one of these, go ahead and send me a message, and first person to send me a message gets it. All right, my friends, back to the program. And, by the way, I can't tell you how excited I am to see Ovi again. He's been on the program numerous times before, and I've got this ongoing series on the show, and I call it Escape from Communism. And what I do is every time I run into somebody who literally escaped a communist country, I make it a point to sit down with them and record their story. And here's why. Because socialism and communism is one of those things that we just can't seem to kill off. And it goes to the nature of human beings, that there are some people in our society that just want collectivism. And they think that, everybody should have the same outcomes. And that's not what our country was built on. In our country, everybody has an equal opportunity to succeed. Doesn't mean you're going to have the same outcome. Everybody's different. Some people are smarter than others. Some people are faster than others. Some people are more skilled with their hands. But everybody's got the same opportunities to succeed. And they're at every time in human history, in every country, and we're experiencing it right now, there are people that tend towards collectivism or communism. It's one of those things that was mentioned in the Bible. Just read about the Tower of Babel and what happened. And so communism and socialism is just one of those things that refuses to die, or that we are just incapable of killing off. And so every time I get the opportunity to sit down and talk with somebody who escaped communism, I do that. And so if you go to Podbean, or I guess you can go to any of the podcasting apps, and you just search for communism, you'll find them. I think that there's four different episodes that I've done over the years, and hopefully pretty soon I'll do another one. I've got somebody else in mind that I want to sit down with, though. Tracking them down is a little bit of a little bit of a chore. So anyway, Ovi Muntean, October 11th, right here in Sheridan. It's going to be a great time. You should really come and meet Ovi. Back to the news. From the New York Post, David Hogg's grift is a warning about self-proclaimed reformers. And so David Hogg, he was the guy that got elected as vice chairman of the DNC. He is a radical anti-gun activist. After the Parkland shooting, Hogg started being very loud, and he got a lot of recognition. And he got himself elected to the DNC. And one of the controversies is he was going to use DNC money to go after some of the more establishment Democrats, he said. Let me just read you a couple of the opening paragraphs of this piece, and then we'll continue. We'll talk about it. Quote, this is from the New York Post. David Hogg's PAC only spent $455,000 on 3 candidates, while spending millions on consultants and its own digital ads, according to campaign finance records. Young Democratic reformer David Hogg, it turned out to be a lefty activist, and he's paralyzed his presence at the grisly 2018 Parkland, Florida high school mass shooting into prominence as a gun control activist, then a Harvard degree, and finally a nice little niche for himself in the wild, wild world of Washington, D.C. He even briefly served as the DNC vice chair. 2 years ago, he created a political action committee called Leaders We Deserve, vowing it would identify and elect progressive trailblazers who challenge the status quo. Hence his promise in April to spend $20 million to primary incumbent Democrats, a vow that got him ousted from the DNC. Oops. So far, Leaders Who Deserve has spent less on finding leaders and more on promoting itself and enriching D.C. swamp creatures. Campaign finance records show that the PAC spent only about $455,000 on candidates, and 2 of the 3 got creamed. The one success was Gotham's own Zoran Mamdani, who pulled in about $300,000 of the PAC's $455,000 in candidate spending, but raised millions elsewhere, so didn't really need Hogg's help. Meanwhile, Leaders We Deserve blew $2.5 million on consultants, $1.1 million on its own digital ads, $965,000 on donor lists, and nearly $5,000 on a fitness class subscription. Nothing says challenging the status quo like using donor money for Pilates. Hogg is hardly the first to, live high on the hog by identifying a message that resonates widely and then banking the cash. It's very similar to what happened with Black Lives Matter, where they took in a heck of a lot of money, and most of that cash went to houses for the leadership of Black Lives Matter. And there are a lot of these political grifters that raise a lot of money, but don't do a whole heck of a lot. And, David Hogg, he is just another example in the world of political graft and grift. And, as the article says, he took in millions of dollars and thus far hasn't even spent $500,000 of it, of donor money to do that. Now, Washington is, and this is how the piece ends, Washington is a frothing ecosystem of influencers, lobbyists, consultants, politicians, organizers, etc., paying and billing each other in the name of greater causes. Every generation brings forth new crusaders against this beast. Only for many or most go native. It doesn't mean that reform isn't badly needed. It absolutely is. But rather than you need to follow the money, not the rhetoric. And that's the case in Wyoming politics, too. In the last election cycle, there was a tremendous amount of money that was spent to elect far left candidates to office. The best example of that is Barry Crago in Johnson County. Well, Johnson County and Sheridan County. In that race, there was over $80,000 spent. The race before, the previous Senate district, and not knowing the exact figures, but you could run a Senate race in Wyoming for $12,000 to $15,000. Not anymore. I foresee in the next election cycle, next year, we're going to see way more campaign spending because conservatives have taken over the House of Representatives. And you've already seen a lot of the spending happening, and the media support. The Wyoming left has gone to great lengths to demonize the Freedom Caucus, which, it's amazing. You got people that just want conservative government and conservative representation, and the left goes absolutely apoplectic over it. whenever there's a threat to their political establishment, they will go to no ends to defeat it. And it is just another example of the collectivism that I referred to earlier, and the collectivism that Ovi talks about. And I mean, it's just amazing the amount of money that's spent on politics. Let's see here. Oh, here's another one that happened, and this one is truly bizarre, my friends. Of course, over the weekend, I'm sure you saw and I think this came in on Friday, but from the New York Post, the guy that tried to kill Brett Kavanaugh, or at least had a plan and then turned himself in, well, he received an 8-year sentence. From the New York Post, Attorney General Pam Bondi says the DOJ will appeal the woefully insufficient sentence for would-be Kavanaugh assassin. Now, again, this is just another example of the culture of death that we are now living in. And I quote, Attorney General Pam Bondi vowed that the Department of Justice will be appealing the woefully insufficient, and that's a quotation there, sentence of the would-be assassin of would-be Supreme Court Justice, the would-be assassin of Supreme Court Justice Brett Kavanaugh that was handed down by a Maryland federal judge on Friday. Quote, the attempted assassination of Supreme Court Justice Kavanaugh was a disgusting attack on our entire judicial system by a profoundly disturbed individual. Maryland U.S. District Judge Deborah Boardman, an appointee of former President Joe Biden, gave attempted killer Nicholas Roski, who came out after being caught as a trans woman named Sophie, just an 8-year sentence, which had been requested by his defense team. DOJ prosecutors sought a prison term of 30 to life for the man who targeted the High Court justice in June of 2022. He arrived in a taxi outside Kavanaugh's Chevy Chase, Maryland home with a Glock 17, ammunition, and a tactical light, zip ties, pepper spray, and burglary tools. The Simi Valley, California native spotted Deputy U.S. Marshals upon exiting the taxi and kept walking down the street before dialing 911, reported having suicidal and homicidal thoughts, and asked for psychiatric help. Federal prosecutors said Roski planned to kill the justice after the Supreme Court's draft decision in Dobbs v. Jackson, and that was the decision that overturned abortion. Quote, the thought that Roe v. Wade and gay marriage both being repealed made me furious, Roski confessed later, noting that he was targeting at least 3 justices and planned to carry out an assassination that could alter decisions on the 9-member court for, quote, for decades to come, according to statements and encrypted messages obtained by the feds. The defendant's actions and intent, which were determined, focused, and undeterred for months, were extremely dangerous to the lives of multiple sitting justices, their family members, and our constitutional order. So anyway, Nicholas Roski, he decides that he's going to kill Justice Kavanaugh, and a liberal leftist judge gives him 8 years. That's it. 8 years for a plot to kill a sitting Supreme Court justice. Now, this was one of the first, or maybe not the first, but one of the first very few, and of course we had the Bernie Sanders supporters attempt to kill Steve Scalise and other Republicans at the congressional baseball game practice. But there have been several attempts and assassinations in the last few years. And my friends, it just tells you that we are absolutely living in a culture of violence. And we have got to turn down the volume knob. And I don't mean, and let me just talk about this for a minute. This program is one of the few in Wyoming that calls it as I see it. That's my job, is to tell you the facts. I tell you what these people are doing, and sometimes in their own words. For example,
horse crap.
Exactly. That was Lloyd Larson. And there are others, for example, telling you the truth about Cale Case. Or I call him Nancy Case because he says crazy things. Let me just find it. Here we go. He says crazy things like this.
This is a good deal for Wyoming. It could be a good deal. We can't even start to figure it out until we pass this bill.
It's not offensive. It's not violent. It's not any of those things to tell you what people are saying. We have to speak truth, my friends. We have to tell you the facts. And that's why I started Cowboy State Politics, because quite frankly, I was sick and tired of being lied to by the media. Now, telling facts, speaking the truth, is not violence. That's what Charlie Kirk did. I mean, Charlie Kirk spoke the truth, and he backed it up with knowledge and reasoning, and the left killed him for it. And that's why you're seeing, it's one of the reasons why you're seeing a lot of violence now, because the left can't handle facts. Whenever they're exposed, they turn violent. Because I told you this last week, and I said a lot on the program, that the left's ideas don't work in the real world, and they get extraordinarily violent when they're exposed. And I can tell you for a fact, my friends, I can show you the threats. But that's just what the left does, and we can't let that stop us from saying the truth. However, that doesn't mean that we need to be calling each other Hitler. Those things are coming from the left, and let's not buy into the whole, well, both sides do it. There's violence on both sides. No. Put the scales up, and let's talk about how many radical left-wing activists have committed violence. There's a couple of cities that are burning right now, Portland and Chicago, for that very reason, because they can't stand the fact that we have to enforce the law. They can't handle the truth. And my friends, we can speak the truth. We can have conversations. We can have debates without it turning into violence. That's what Charlie Kirk did. And that's what inflamed so many people on the left. There are so many folks to this day, and I don't expect it to stop anytime soon, that are just spouting things that are just bald-faced lies. As I referred to earlier, I mean, you could watch hundreds of videos of Charlie Kirk, and you're not going to find him saying one racist thing. Now, he may hurt your feelings by telling you the truth, but that's not violence. Hurting your feelings, that's not violent. And, on occasion I do that on this program. But let me tell you the rest of this whole Nicholas Roski thing. Now, this is the perfect reason why we have to continually speak the truth, because there are others, many of them in the mainstream media, that refuse to do so. Oh, you know what? Actually, looking at the clock, let's go ahead and take our last break, and then I will give you this perfect example of why we have to continue telling the truth to each other and challenging the left. So we'll do that after the break. But first, an absolutely outrageous profit timeout. Back in a minute. Everybody say, night is gone away, rock's now down, nothing left today. No one gets today, we got to face the truth, night far away. Tell me what you want, here's what you got. You can every day more than we have ever seen. Rock's now down, don't ask why. It's spring-ish in Wyoming. Well, what that means for the uninitiated is that it's going to be 70 degrees one day and then snow 1.5 feet the next. And really, if you don't like those two options, just wait a little bit. The weather will change. I know, it sounds a little stressful, but really you should put your mind at ease and buy a pair of socks from the Buffalo Wool Company. They'll keep you warm and dry even on the nastiest, coldest spring-ish day, and they'll keep you cool and dry even when it's 75 and sunny. To get you a pair, go to their website, thebuffalowoolco.com. Trust me, you're not going to be disappointed. Are you one of those guys that listen to the president just a little bit too closely and now you're tired of winning? Are you getting the feeling that there's been way too many good things happening in our country and you just can't take it anymore? Well, if you are, and you think you should follow Rosie O'Donnell's example and get the heck out of Dodge, you need to call Rebecca Bextel at eXp Realty. She'll make those foreign country living ideas a reality for you. All you have to do is call 307-699-3519, and she'll make sure some freedom-loving, red-blooded American will now live in the home that you no longer want. If you want to sell your house, or if you want to buy one that's way better than the house you have right now, give Rebecca a call. Again, her phone number is 307-699-3519.
I've never felt the freedom like I do. I feel stronger every day, don't you? Well, I can show you how. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only
State Politics is only going to get stronger. Now, this program is syndicated on the OBBM network. You can find that on Apple TV, Roku, on Amazon Fire. I'm extraordinarily excited about that. Welcome back to the program, my friends. Cowboy State Politics Live on a Tuesday. As I mentioned, Cowboy State Politics Live is now syndicated on the OBBM network. Go to Apple TV, go to Roku, download it, check it out. You could watch. It's all on demand now. I expect in the very near future we'll have a live spot on that program, but that's coming. Also, if you want to win a copy of Ovi Muntean's book, it's actually his father's book, Willing to Die. Go ahead and send me a message. The very first person that sends me a message today asking for a copy of this book, I will send you one. It's signed by Ovi. There you go. And I'm going to give one of these away, and I'm pretty sure I've got 4 of them. I'm going to give one of these away every day until next Saturday. So go ahead and do that. Now, before the break, I told you that I had a great example of why we have to continue speaking the truth. And it all goes back to this Nicholas Roski guy. The person who was going to kill Supreme Court Justice Brett Kavanaugh. Now, this is from the never-ending broadcast of communism news, NBC News. Now, listen to the headline. Woman sentenced to 8 years for attempting to assassinate Brett Kavanaugh. Now, hold the phone. Hold on a minute. Just a second. A little bit ago, he was a dude. Well, he still is, but now he's identifying as Sophie. But that's not the story. Okay, the story is what the never-ending broadcast of communism network's piece refers to him as. Quote, a woman who pleaded guilty to attempting to assassinate Supreme Court Justice Brett Kavanaugh 3 years ago was sentenced Friday to more than 8 years in prison. A woman. Next paragraph. Sophie Roski, now 29, was arrested near Kavanaugh's home in June of 2020. No. Nicholas Roski was arrested at Kavanaugh's home. Next paragraph. She appeared in court on Friday. No. She didn't appear. He appeared in court on Friday. Let's see here. Okay, here we go. U.S. District Judge Deborah Boardman sentenced Roski to 97 months in prison, 8 years and 1 month, saying that she felt Roski has shown remorse for her actions. She ordered Roski, whom she referred to as a transgender woman, to a lifetime of supervised relief. She has taken full responsibility for her actions, Boardman said, and it goes on and on. Nowhere in this piece does it refer to Nicholas Roski as actually being a man. Not a single reference in this entire piece refers to him as being a dude. See, this is the bullcrap that the media perpetrates on you. The truth is, my friends, that a man cannot become a woman any more than he can become a trout. I mean, it is not physically possible. At no time in your entire life were you ever another gender and then switch to what you are right now. That is a fantasy. Now, the question is, why does the left continue to push lies on you? Well, if they can convince you or get you to question one of the most fundamental truths that all of us know, every single person that's walking the face of the earth had a mother and a father. That's how things work. But if they can get you to question that, well, then they can get you to question anything. And that's why the left continues to lie about everything. It's not necessarily about convincing you of one lie. It's about convincing you of all lies to get you to question anything. Because if they can get you to question whether or not you are a man or a woman, well, then they can get you to question anything. Last week, I told you about Ian Roberts. Now, Ian was the school superintendent in Des Moines, Iowa, who has a very, very long criminal history. This guy typifies everything every reason that we have a problem with our immigration system. That every single thing you can think of that is a problem with illegal immigration, it's this dude. From the Blaze, and I quote, DHS releases astounding criminal history of Ian Roberts, former Des Moines school superintendent. Now, how he ever got, hired is the biggest question in my mind. Now, the school district now has filed a lawsuit against the recruiting company, but they're the ones that hired him. So didn't they do their own research? Well, of course not. No. We just pay other people to do research for us. But anyway, here we go. From the Blaze. Quote, the controversy over a migrant who allegedly lied his way into a very high-paying, cushy job at the Des Moines Public Schools in Iowa is growing by the minute. On Friday, the Department of Homeland Security released a detailed list of the criminal offenses allegedly committed by Ian Roberts, the man arrested by federal officials on September 28th. ICE said that Roberts was a migrant from Guyana, was present in the U.S. illegally, and had committed numerous other offenses during that time. Now, just before we even get too far into this, let me just ask you a question: Is this the guy that you want around your children? Check this out. Is he the one that you want being the superintendent of schools? I mean, he doesn't. Definitely looks like. And to be fair, nobody looks very good in their booking photo. But you would think that a guy who was the superintendent of schools for an entire school district would look a little bit better than that. I mean, the guy just looks like a criminal, because he is. So Roberts tried to speed away when he was confronted by ICE, but he was later apprehended with the help of the Iowa State Patrol. Quote, at the time of the arrest, a loaded handgun, a hunting knife, and $3,000 cash were found in his vehicle. On October 2nd, he was charged with being an illegal alien in possession of firearms, read the statement from ICE. Many on the left initially defended Roberts, and one official even called for radical empathy to protect him from consequences of his actions. But those voices have been quieted recently. Now, okay, so he's the superintendent of schools, and yet he's still acting like a criminal. So, all right, he knows that he's an illegal alien, but he's got a loaded firearm, a whole bunch of cash, and a knife. I don't really care about the knife. I mean, knives are not illegal yet in America. They are in Great Britain, but I guess lengths of knives are illegal. Anyway, he's still acting like a criminal, and for good reason, because he has a very, very long criminal record. Listen to this. This is absolutely amazing. Now, remember, he got hired to be the head guy in a school. We're all worried about safety in schools and school shooters and criminals breaking through the school door. No. This school district, they hired one. Here's why we know that. In July of 1996, he had charges related to the criminal possession of narcotics with intent to sell. So possession with intent to distribute in the Wyoming parlance. November of 1998, he had one charge of third-degree unauthorized use of a vehicle, grand theft auto, in Queens that was later dismissed. In November of 2012, convicted for reckless driving, unsafe operation, and speeding in Maryland. Okay, all right, maybe we'll let the speeding thing go, but he's an illegal alien, so he shouldn't have a driver's license anyway. February of 2020, charges related to second-degree criminal possession of a weapon, because he's an illegal alien and, he can't possess a weapon. January of 2022, convicted of unlawful possession of a loaded firearm in Pennsylvania. September 2025, arrested by ICE officers, and October of 2025, criminal charge of being an illegal alien in possession of a firearm, because if you're not a citizen, you can't possess a gun in America. In addition, Roberts' lengthy criminal history of interactions about his immigration status were released. Now listen to this. And again, he got hired by the Des Moines School District. 94, he entered a non-immigration visa and departed, but returned before his arrest. 1999, he entered through San Francisco on a student visa. In 2000, ICE approved a work authorization request for Roberts. 2021, his green card request was rejected. He applied 3 more times, though 2018, he was rejected each time. 2020, he was given a notice to appear before an immigration judge. 2024, he was ordered in absentia to be removed by a Texas judge. In April of 25, an immigration judge ruled against reopening his case. In September, he was arrested by ICE officers. Now, ICE said he was in the custody of the U.S. Marshals and would be prosecuted for his most recent crimes. School officials involved in approving Roberts' hiring are now under intense scrutiny. Gee, I wonder why. Because they allowed a repeat criminal offender to be the head of their school district. I mean, is there any other thing that an illegal alien could do that this guy hasn't done? I mean, he is the perfect example of everything every reason why we need to deal with illegal immigration in this country. Now, here's an interesting piece, and on occasion I find these, and I'm a bit of a space junkie anyway. My lovely wife makes fun of me of being totally addicted to Star Trek. I don't know why she isn't. She's just space stuff isn't her thing, I guess. But it's okay. You're entitled to be wrong every once in a while. But here we go. Saturn's moon shows major signs of life. Now, I don't mean that there's little green men trotting around on the surface of that moon, but it does show signs of life. And I quote, astronomers have found that Saturn's moon, Enceladus, is spewing out copious amounts of complex organic molecules, suggesting that it's an even more promising place to look for extraterrestrial life than we thought before. Now, again, we're not talking about little green men trotting around on the surface, but signs of life, organic material. As detailed in a new study published in the journal Nature Astronomy, researchers examined data collected by NASA and the European Space Agency's Cassini spacecraft, which visited the tiny moon between 2005 and 2015. They found evidence that its suspected underground ocean is home to complex chemical reactions, which on Earth are closely associated with life. The research builds on existing findings that jets of water are bursting forth from Cassini's underground ocean, shooting ice particles straight into space, some of which find their way back onto the moon's surface. Cassini was detecting samples from Enceladus all the time as it flew through Saturn's E ring, said lead author Frey at the University of Berlin researcher and Nozer, I'm not even going to try to pronounce that one, in a statement. Quote, we had already found many organic molecules in these ice grains, including precursors for amino acids. Now, amino acids and proteins, that's what forms cells. Specifically, the team examined ocean spray data collected by the Cassini's Cosmic Dust Analyzer in 2008. Quote, the ice grains contain not just frozen water, but other molecules, including organics, Nozer explained. Since these particular particulates traveled fast enough, roughly 11.2 miles per second when hitting the instrument, they didn't cluster, giving the researchers a chance to see the previously hidden signals. They found evidence that the more organic molecules originated in the ocean, including ones that had never been observed before, such as signs of nitrogen and oxygen-bearing compounds, ethers and esters, among others. Totally cool. They may have found life on another planet, and it's I just totally get jazzed about anything to do with astronomy. When I was in high school, I was a high school senior, and the school had a 16-inch Celestron telescope that they never used. I mean, it just sat in a closet, and they never got it out. So me and my advisor, or independent study teacher, went to the high school and said, hey, we need to borrow this telescope. And so for an entire year, I had that telescope mounted in the back of my Blazer. And anytime we got a chance, we would take it out and set it up. We took some pretty cool pictures of comets. I mean, it was great. I just absolutely love astronomy. So that's why anytime I see a story that's pretty cool like that, I want to bring it to you. From the Daily Caller. NFL broadcaster Mark Sanchez hospitalized, then arrested after an Indianapolis stabbing. So just because you're a famous quarterback and you're an NFL broadcaster, I guess that doesn't preclude you from criminal activity. Police charged former New York Jets quarterback Mark Sanchez on Saturday following a violent confrontation with a 69-year-old food delivery driver outside a downtown Indianapolis pub. Police said the Fox Sports analyst Mark Sanchez confronted the 69-year-old delivery driver near Lau Miller's Pub and Eatery just after midnight and demanded that he move his car, according to the New York Post. When the driver's attempt to de-escalate failed, he reportedly sprayed Sanchez with pepper spray and, after seeing it had no effect, stabbed him in the chest. Let's see. The Indianapolis Metropolitan Police Department Indianapolis, not Minneapolis, Initially reported officers responded to a stabbing incident around 12:30 a.m. Saturday, in which one man suffered injuries consistent with stab wounds. Police said the altercation involved two adult men, with one sustaining lacerations and other receiving stab wounds. Both men received medical treatment. The man with the stab wounds remains hospitalized in stable condition. Investigators reviewed surveillance footage and plan to present a case to the Marion County Prosecutor's Office for a charging decision. Officers later confirmed, following further investigation and consultation with prosecutors, they arrested Sanchez on charges of battery with injury, unlawful entry of a motor vehicle, and public intoxication. Police said he remains hospitalized and has not yet been booked, noting the prosecutor's office will decide on formal charges. Currently, Sanchez works as a Fox Sports analyst and was in town to call Sunday's Colts-Raiders game at Lucas Oil Stadium. Fox confirmed his hospitalization and issued a statement thanking the medical staff. It also asked for the public to respect his family's privacy after he stabbed somebody. So evidently, if you are a Fox Sports announcer or if you're a famous quarterback, doesn't preclude you from criminal activity. You see, when we prosecute crimes, everything works out okay. It's just we got to continue doing that. Now, this is a story that I meant to bring you last week. And, this is one of those that the government shutdown might take care of. That we have multiple buildings that, and not just buildings, multiple agencies, multiple buildings that we spend a tremendous amount of money on that nobody really cares about. This happens in Wyoming as well. Currently, our friend Agent 29 is taking a look at the Department of Health budget, because what happens is you don't budget from zero every single year. And Ken got in a lot of trouble for saying this, but he's absolutely right. That what you do is you take last year's budget, whatever you spent last year, and you say, okay, what do we have to do to keep everything that we've got? And then you ask yourself, hey, what else would I like to do? What would I like to add to that budget? And then you add on top of it, and then you add a little bit more, hoping that, of course, when it gets reduced, it'll be just what you wanted. But what that does is it allows you to fund programs that are duplicative, that nobody cares about, and that everybody has forgotten about. And one of those in the federal government is a giant multi-million-dollar government museum that nobody visits. In truth, let's see here, the Smithsonian's smallest museum is called here we go. The Smithsonian's well-funded Black Power Museum remains focused on leftist politics and race, but almost has zero demand. End of quote. On a sunny late summer day, this reporter stood outside the museum, located in a Washington, D.C. slum, far from any tourists, from noon till 3 p.m., ready to count visitors. But there was no one to count. At 12:28 p.m., one woman entered while screaming into her cell phone. She stayed just long enough to use the bathroom and left lecturing whomever it was on the other end of her call about whatever they were arguing about, and there's lots of profanity there. Welcome to the Anacostia Community Museum, a 6-room exhibit hall that receives $3 million each year in federal funding. The museum opened in 1967 to focus on African American history, community issues, local history, and the arts. Since then, the Smithsonian has added 2 separate, much larger museums focused on African art and African American history, making it largely redundant. Yet it remains as if someone simply forgot to close it down. Now, the government is finally weighing whether or not to do just that. 10 years after the massive African-American History and Cultural Museum supplanted it, there's little reason for the Anacostia Community Museum to spend millions to welcome a handful of visitors a day. The Trump administration's 2026 budget proposes zeroing out funding for the museum, saying its exhibits should be moved to the larger one. But Congress has yet to act on that decision. But it may soon. Smithsonian museums have enough funding to remain open through October 6th, or yesterday. But as the government shutdown continues, the Trump administration leverages the funding freeze to slash non-essential programs, including this thing. Now, listen to some of this. Okay, this is crazy. At 1:39, and the reporter's still sitting outside of the museum, a van pulled up with the other attendees that showed up during this reporter's 3-hour stakeout. The visitors were there only partly of their own volition. 4 elderly residents from a nursing home in the wealthy section of D.C. were carted in by nursing staff. They ended their field trip at 2:30, so they were there for a little bit less than an hour. When this reporter finally entered, 10 employees were standing in the lobby, 10, staring at the front door. They greeted me enthusiastically and offered me a Starbucks coffee from a fancy kiosk, an amenity that primarily serves employees since coffee isn't allowed in the main section. In a break room adorned with a big screen TV and mahogany furniture, 4 black female employees and one white, green-haired employee of uncertain gender relaxed. Even with the paltry amount of space to fill, the slogan out front, "Powered by the People," isn't just a nod to communism. It's an acknowledgement that the large portion of the content is simply coloring book pages scribbled on by visitors that have been affixed to the walls. It's as much a museum gallery as a grocery store community billboard. In one of these visitor galleries, guests take a printed out piece of paper containing the silhouette of a head with an afro color in the hair, using provided crayons, and pin it to a large bulletin board. Some added messages on them, such as "Gay Rights Matter." Another wall is dedicated to pages that visitors colored in using stencils of musical instruments. With no visitors to attend to, a Smithsonian employee peruses the art. Nearly half the museum, including a section named "A Century of Black Arts Education" in Washington, D.C., is dedicated to knickknacks pertaining to local high school memorabilia and might be better suited in the schools themselves rather than a national museum. According to the plaque, quote, "It would be difficult to name a high school the graduates of former pupils which have achieved success in such numbers and of such brilliancy as those trained in the Dunbar High School." So this entire museum is funded by millions of your tax dollars and doesn't see any more than 5 people a day. And yet you are continually spending money on it. Yet another thing that needs to go down the drain with this most recent government shutdown. I can't wait to see that one go down the drain, swirl around the drain. Now, have you heard Kamala Harris's most recent lie about the 2024 election? Yeah. This was the closest race in American history. It was a nose finish like at the Kentucky Derby. Except, of course, that Kamala lost every single battleground state and lost it by a pretty wide electoral vote margin. But that's not what Kamala is telling everybody. From the Daily Caller, Harris published a book in September called 107 Days. As I heard a radio commentator say yesterday, it should be titled "Everybody But Me Sucks," because that's pretty much what the book is, which detailed her short time on the campaign trail. Harris writes that 350 transgender individuals were murdered in America during 2024. 15 of those, she writes, were kids. The Daily Caller was unable to find the statistic that Harris cited, and it appears the former vice president confused the statistics with worldwide numbers. Transgender Europe released their annual trans murder monitoring project in November, reporting that from the time of their last report in November of 23, 350 transgender people had been killed worldwide. Not in this country, worldwide. Of those, 15 were under 18 years old. The figures match the numbers Harris cited, though the former vice president claims the statistics are from America, not globally. Transgender Europe claimed that 41 transgender people were murdered in America from October 23 to September of 24. Well, the rest of the book is no more accurate. It is riddled with inaccuracies. And, not that I've read it. I've just read lots of news reports about it. And it is no different than the campaign rhetoric that she was spewing during the campaign. I mean, there's no reason to assume that anything that Kamala Harris says is true. And in fact, it's not. And, hopefully we'll be done with her. But I have this sneaking suspicion that she will continue to pop her head up every once in a while that it's least convenient for us. Well, that pretty much burns up another busy broadcast hour on the program, my friends. Make sure, if you want a copy of Ovi Muntean's father's book, Willing to Die, it's a great read. And if you want to know your history, if you want to know the history of communism, this is one to pick up. So if you just send me a message, the very first message I get today, I'll send you a copy of the book, and I'll give one of these away every day till the end of the week. So we'll do this again tomorrow, hopefully without the power outage. So from the base of the Bighorns, at the Cowboy State Politics Studio, I'm David Iverson, and this is Cowboy State Politics. See you tomorrow, my friends.